All right, everyone, let's not waste any time and just get straight into breaking down this awesome fight between Israel Adesanya and Alex Peirera at UFC 281. So in this video, I don't want to go too wide with the analysis and break down a ton of their fights to try to find similarities and all these different things, because we already have a 2-fight sample size from them in kickboxing, and then we can kind of go from there and see where they're at today in MMA. I primarily want to talk about some of the main talking points that I see being discussed online, such as, can Alex Peirera knock out Israel Adesanya again? Will he catch him with the left hook? What will Israel's strategy be? Does past fights of Israel's, like the Gastelum fight, have any bearing on where he's at now? You know, does that show that he has vulnerabilities to being pressured and caught? Things like that. So we'll get to that, but let's first start with their first kickboxing fight, kind of talk about that a little bit, and then move on to the second one as well, and then jump ahead to where they're at in MMA currently. So by the time that these two meet at UFC 281, it will have been 6.5 years ago that they had their first fight in the kickboxing ring. It was a really good fight with an odd decision, and in round one, Israel Adesanya had really good movement. He was sticking and moving really well. He was dictating the pace of the fight. He was the one that was mostly aggressive and had Pereira on the back foot, and he had landed the more effective shots overall, so I gave him that first round. So heading into round two, Pereira came out way more aggressive than he was before, and he was pressuring Israel right off the bat. However, Israel did a good job at backing him off and reestablishing control of the round, but something weird happened about halfway through round two after Israel threw a kick and he goes to take a step and he kind of makes this weird wobble. It's hard to describe, but it just didn't look right. And he later took another step that just didn't look right either. And after that, Pereira started to gain some steam and land some big shots on him, and definitely the more effective shots overall. Now, I don't know if the issue with Israel's leg was tied directly to Pereira gaining momentum in that round or not, but overall, Pereira had the more effective offense, and I gave him that round to tie the fight 1-1 heading into the third. Now, heading into round three, Israel established control again, and that round overall looked more like it did in round one, with Israel landing the more effective shots, dictating the pace, and Pereira on the defense most of the time. Now, by the end of round three, I'd given the round to Israel and the fight overall 2-1, but when the decision was read, it was given unanimously to Alex Peirera. People online discussing the fight and who could understand Mandarin said that it even confused the commentators at the time, and they made a comment that they didn't understand how Pereira had won the fight. So overall, it was a really bizarre outcome to me, because I felt that Adesanya had won the fight convincingly, but they would rematch a year later in 2017. In round one of their second fight, Israel Adesanya picked up where he left off and again was looking very good against Alex. He did a really good job cutting him off, cornering him, sticking and moving, landing good shots, and there were a couple close moments, but overall I felt that Adesanya won the round again and his movement looked really good. In round two, Israel really started to heat up and he continued to have Pereira on the defensive, and when he was attacked, he did a really good job defending the shots and deflecting them. Pereira had a couple moments in round two, but he was mainly getting outstruck by Adesanya, and Adesanya's counter-striking overall just looked really sharp. When they would exchange shots, Adesanya was definitely getting the best of the exchanges, and eventually he overwhelmed Pereira to the point where the ref had to step in and give him a standing 8 count. After the standing 8 count, Adesanya continued to dominate the round and he clearly won it, going up 2-0 in the fight. Round 3 really showed how incredible Alex Pereira's chin is and his recovery ability, because he put the pressure on right away. Pereira's pressure eventually led to the finishing sequence, where Israel switched from orthodox to southpaw, threw a left straight, Pereira responded with a right hook which was deflected, but then threw a left hook as Israel's line of sight was obstructed, and the hook went in front of Israel's defense to knock him out. The timing of everything was just really unfortunate on Adesanya's part. He even had his glove up like he should to defend that incoming left hook, but it happened to just travel right in front of him and clip his chin, landing the knockout. After the knockout, that brought Alex Pereira's record against Adesanya to 2-0, 1 win by decision and 1 by knockout. However, I really feel that Adesanya won that first fight, so it's more of a 1-1 in my head, but officially it is 2-0. If we look at it at a round by round basis and look at the first 5 rounds that they fought, I would have Israel winning 4-1, and one of those rounds having the standing 8 count, where in MMA, if there was no standing 8 count, I'm really confident that he would have gotten finished there. Pereira was really out on his feet, and his recovery ability is incredible. For him to come back like he did and not only fight aggressively but land the knockout is absolutely insane. After their fight, they both went on to be champions, each in their own way. Alex Peirera won 2 titles in Glory, and Israel Adesanya won the UFC Middleweight title and currently has 5 title defenses. Currently, Israel Adesanya has had 13 fights in the UFC, whereas Alex Pereira has had 3. Because of this, it's not really relevant to compare stats between the two, but I did want to note that the average reach for all of Israel Adesanya's opponents combined is 75 inches. This average of 75 inches means that on average, Israel has a 5-inch reach advantage over his opponents. The other interesting statistic here is that the average height of all of his opponents is 6 feet tall, which gives Israel a 4-inch height advantage on average. Things here will be different with Alex Peirera because he's 6'4" with a 79-inch reach, whereas Israel Adesanya is 6'4" with an 80-inch reach. So whereas Israel usually has a height and reach advantage, in this fight, it'll be dead even. Now, instead of going through all their fights, I want to first look at 2 fights of theirs that people tend to bring up a lot, and that's the Gastelum fight with Adesanya and the Bruno Silva fight with Alex Peirera. These 2 fights are typically regarded as their weakest fights, so I kind of want to take a look at the vulnerabilities there to see if there really are any, or are they kind of being overblown. So taking a look at the Gastelum fight here, one of the main talking points I see a lot online is people saying that Israel was really hittable in this fight and it showed a lot of weaknesses in his striking and that he tends to be overrated because of it. Now, I don't think he's overrated. I think there's certain opponents for each fighter that can slip through the cracks, and find chinks in their armor and, exploit certain things about their defense. So I want to take a closer look at this and, what did this fight show exactly? Gastelum was definitely able to land some good shots, such as this sequence here where Israel throws this right straight and Kelvin counters with a right hook that clips Adesanya pretty good here. He ends up retreating and gets clipped by another right hook on that open side, which knocks him down into the fence. And a worrying element here, if you're an Israel fan and you're concerned about Alex Pereira's devastating left hook, is during this sequence, Gastelum winds up and throws a hard left hook that lands clean on the chin and sends Israel retreating out the other side. This next sequence is a similar situation again. Israel throws out that right jab from the southpaw stance. Kelvin throws a right hook, which clips Israel, and then he comes over the top with that left hook, which Israel runs right into as he retreats out this way. Another left hook sequence here out in the open. Kelvin leads with that right jab and then comes up over the top with a left hook, which hits Israel more in the back of the head, but again knocks him off balance, and Kelvin starts to lock up this clinch situation here. Later on in the next round, they end up getting in a grappling scramble where Israel gets up off the ground and Kelvin chases the takedown towards the fence. Now, Israel gets away and is able to start to turn into him, but as he does, Kelvin responds by throwing a big right hook, which clips Israel, and then he follows it up with a left hook again, which also hits Israel and knocks him off balance. Kelvin follows it up by throwing another right hook, which just barely misses as Israel looks to retreat and try to reset after getting hit by both of those shots. A couple more sequences here. Kelvin leads with the right hand, follows it up with that left hook over the top, lands clean, sends Israel back. Here Israel leads with his own right hand. Kelvin slips it, comes back with the right hook, clipping Israel right in the chin, and then follows it up with a left hook over the top. So multiple examples throughout this fight of this left hook landing over and over again, right hooks, just a general vulnerability to hooks coming from both sides, but Kelvin really found a home for that left hook. However, the issue with this example is that Kelvin's a southpaw and Alex Pereira is orthodox, and Pereira doesn't really switch stances very often, so I don't know how applicable this really is as an example to the potential vulnerabilities of Israel. So I was trying to think, who else has Israel fought that has similar size and reach to Alex Pereira and is an orthodox fighter? And right away I thought of Jan Blachowicz. Now, the Jan Blachowicz fight is interesting because it's one of the few people that Israel has fought that can equal him in height and reach. Israel still has a 2-inch reach advantage on Jan, but it's close enough to where it's a very similar fight in that regard. Now, for anyone wondering why I selected the Jan fight, which is a fight where Israel fought up in weight at light heavyweight, I want to make a note that Alex Peirera was the Glory Light Heavyweight Champion, which is a weight class that has a weight limit of 209 pounds. Also, within 2 days of Pereira's last fight against Strickland, he was back up to 219 pounds. And before the Israel fight, Blachowicz was quoted as saying he expected to be about 220 pounds in the cage on fight night after rehydrating from the weight cut. And it's these reasons why I believe that Jan and Pereira are a pretty good comparison, as they are both orthodox, they're both of similar height, similar reach, and potentially similar weight on fight night or within striking distance of each other. I also believe that if Jan was as lean as Pereira is, that he could probably make middleweight as well. Also, like Alex Peirera, Jan fights out of the orthodox stance primarily, and he occasionally will switch, but he mainly stays orthodox. Now, it is worth mentioning that Alex Pereira's striking is more technical than Jan's, and he's also lighter on his feet, but there are some things that we can take from this Jan fight, so let's take a look. So when I was analyzing this fight, one of the things I noticed right away was that Jan was landing this lead left hook a lot, or landing it in combos, and that's obviously not good when you're fighting someone like Alex Peirera. who has a devastating left hook. Jan was finding a lot of places to land that left hook, which again is not great when you're fighting someone like Alex Peirera, who's really good in the clinch and really good at mixing it up in the clinch. So like in this scenario here, they're in the clinch, Jan throws a knee. It's tough to tell if it lands flush or not, but they come out of the clinch here. And as they come out of the clinch, Israel steps in and Jan counters right away with a left hook that lands before Israel can get to him. In this example, Israel takes the initiative himself by leading with that left hand, and Jan counters by coming over the top with the left hook, which again lands flush on his chin and knocks Israel off balance. Also going back a couple frames here, the reason it knocks him off balance is that Israel ends up, overextended and his hips end up squared up, and Jan has the dominant angle on him here. He's more perpendicular. So when he lands this, it's going to send him reeling to the side like this. And he's also going to have to cut an angle to reset to try to get Jan back in front of him again. Another sequence here that was really nice by Jan, Israel starts to step in and get a feel for that lead hand to kind of gauge his distance. He uses it to throw a strike off of it, but Jan parries the hand midway as it comes in, and he's going to deflect it off to the side. So he pushed it off this way. It's kind of tough to see with a screenshot, but he pushes his hand down this way, and that's what sends Israel's hand down. Now once it's down and his defenses are lowered, Jan counters by throwing a left hook over the top and connecting once again. Now one more scenario here, Israel steps in to attack, Jan goes to counter with that left hook, and it's not going to land flush, it lands more on the forearm, but this example is more about the opportunity that this side is open for this left hook to come up, especially against someone like Pereira. If Pereira's in this situation, he's probably landing a really clean left hook on you or getting very close to. So just another example of the potential opportunity here. And also on the other side, Jan starts to throw this right hook around, which again is going to miss here. But, there are these openings here in these exchanges. And if we remember back to the second fight with Israel and Pereira, he did get caught in an exchange. Another really successful strike for Jan in this fight was the right hand lead, or the right straight right down the middle, splitting the guard. So here you can see him lunge in with the right hand lead and just connect right on the button on Israel. Again, another example coming up here. Israel starts to back him towards the fence, and Jan backs him off by throwing that right hand lead and really snapping his head back. He really knocked him off balance. I don't know how Israel even really caught his balance here. I mean, look at this angle that he's in. Just incredible balance by Israel. Credit to Israel. And also, if Jan had followed this up with a left hook, I kind of wonder if he would have landed a knockout or gotten the knockdown. Because you can see here, after the right hand lands, he follows it up with this left straight. But as Israel's following this way, it allows him to kind of naturally slip the punch coming this way. Whereas I wonder what would have happened if he would have hooked it this way into the same direction that Israel was falling. He might have fallen right into that left hook and scored a knockout or a knockdown. Now these scenarios are dangerous because Pereira's best weapon is his left hook, and another one of his great weapons is the right straight. And we saw it against Strickland here, where he goes to throw that jab and Strickland goes to parry it with both hands, which was not great on his part because it opened up his face here. It lowered both of his defenses, and Alex is able to get that right hand right over the top of his guard and land it right on the chin. And then of course, if you watch this fight, you know that Pereira ended this fight with a nasty left hook. But there's a detail here I want to point out. I want you to pay attention to Pereira's foot position here and where he's at in relation to the monster logo on the mat. We're just trying to get an idea of where he's at in the cage and his distance. What he's going to do here is he's actually going to steer Strickland into the shot. So he starts here, he takes a step back, and then he takes a step back even further to start to sit down on the hook as Strickland follows him in. So let me go back a couple frames here. Strickland starts over here. Again, look in relation to the logo on the mat. You'll see him walk forward onto that logo. So he takes a couple of steps and he's going to walk right into the hook. Now, the reason why this is significant is that Pereira can fight really well going forward or going backward. Now, this is significant because if you watch the Glory kickboxing match with Alex Peirera versus Artem Vahytov, commentator makes a really interesting comment in that fight where he says you always have to wonder if Alex Pereira is just allowing Vahytov to come in so he can counterpunch him. And that's an interesting thing that Pereira does. He'll try to draw his opponent in so he can land the big shot. He doesn't necessarily have to stalk the opponent and chase him down to land a big hook. He can just start to retreat to have you come in and then throw the big shot and land as you follow. So he can create a counter striking situation without necessarily needing you to throw the combo first. You just have to follow. He can create it with his feet. So going through it one more time, Pereira, gets this upright posture and starts to take a couple steps back, which baits Strickland to come in. He sits back on this left hook. Strickland hasn't even thrown an attack here. It's not a traditional counter striking situation where Strickland attacks first, and Pereira fires over the top. He's just taking steps backward to allow Strickland to get out of position. His hips again are squared up with him directly in front of him. He's not a bladed stance or anything. He's just facing him straight on. So that allows for a perfect position for Pereira to sit down on this hook, and Strickland drops his hand here, and that hook comes over the top and boom, just lands flush for the knockout. Really clean. So now, as awesome as Alex Peirera is, he does have some openings as well. Wouldn't be fair to only look at those openings with Adesanya's fights. We also need to take a look here at the Bruno Silva fight, which would really be Pereira's hardest fight in the UFC so far, seeing as how it went to decision, and he didn't win by knockout. So the main thing that stood out to me in this fight is that Pereira is hittable. Bruno Silva was able to tag him here with a hook, and there's just a lot of sequences where Bruno was able to land on Alex Pereira and show that, he's not necessarily this invulnerable kickboxing god who can't be hit. He is definitely hittable. This is obviously significant too, because I think Bruno Silva is underrated as a striker, but I also don't think he's on the level of Israel. So if Bruno is landing, frequently in these combos on Pereira, it begs the question of, what can Israel do? If Israel is given these same openings, what can he do to counter Pereira and potentially hurt him with the same strikes or more? He may have other combos and other weapons that he can use that Bruno wasn't able to. The other significant factor in this fight was the wrestling, and that Pereira was pretty much wide open for double legs. He really didn't have much of an answer for it. He was pretty good at getting up or defending. He was good at fighting the hands, which a lot of fighters aren't. They'd rather strike or something when they're in a clinch trying to defend a double leg. But Alex Pereira's instincts were really good to break up the hands, to get Silva off his waist, to break up the body lock, to break up the takedown. But he was open for these shots, and he didn't really have much of a sprawl when he would shoot. Silva was able to get deep in on the legs and drive him to the fence to where he could shift him around and get the takedown. Later in the second round, he was able to do the same thing again, ducking off of a hook and shooting deep in on a takedown and just getting it pretty much right away. Again, almost no sprawl resistance at all. Again, in the second round, he was able to shoot the double underneath a hook, get deep on the legs, just perfect timing on it, no chance for Pereira to sprawl, and just to land that takedown and get him down on the ground. The clinch seemed to be a little bit of a rough point for Pereira too, and I mainly mean the clinch where they're locked up with overhooks and more of a grappling scenario rather than a striking clinch scenario where, they're trading blows in the clinch or in a tie clinch scenario, sneaking in uppercuts and those kinds of things. It's more of like a wrestling Greco-Roman clinch type of situation, to where Silva was able to muscle him around pretty good with the body lock. And Pereira didn't really have, much of an answer for it. He would occasionally try to break the hands, but if he wasn't able to, Silva was able to control him and to kind of break the clinch whenever he wanted. And when he did do that, he was able to land some good shots of his own. Again, showing that Pereira, is hittable. He can definitely be open for some shots and be vulnerable to taking more blows than he probably should. Now, speaking of the clinch, one really interesting aspect of Alex Pereira's game that I don't hear talked about a lot is his knee game, and he really uses them in the clinch in a very sneaky way. You really see this when the clinch is in more of an open scenario, meaning, there's not a lot of control, like someone doesn't have a body lock or, double overhooks or an under-over situation where there's not a lot of movement. More of a scenario where maybe they just close the distance and met up in the clinch, or, maybe it's a tie clinch scenario where they're throwing elbows, entering the clinch, or knees or something like that. It's more open-ended. There's more movement that can happen. They're not stuck against the fence, and that's where you really start to see some of these knees. And even against the fence, he throws some of these knees too, which I'll show you in a second. But in general, it's these kind of scenarios. So looking here at the Silva fight again, as Alex comes in, throwing a punch and looks to snatch up this clinch, as soon as he starts to get into the clinch and to steer Silva around, with this arm control here, to kind of control Silva's movement so he can't, get a tie clinch on him or throw punches or elbows himself. He looks to start to turn him, and then he'll open up this space right here. He opens up this space. Let me go back one more. He'll take a step back so that he can throw these quick knees to the body. And these shots are brutal. This is like right to the liver, or right to the gut. And it hurts Silva pretty good here because he reaches down for this leg and starts to look, to push Pereira to the fence, to either take him down or to lock him up so there's not all this space to throw these knees. Now, let me go back a few frames again so we can see that a little bit quicker, and how he snuck this knee in here. So you can even see it as I go backwards here. You know, he starts at distance, he throws the punch, he enters the clinch, he starts to steer Silva around, controlling his elbows so Silva can't attack him. And as he moves through, he just steps back and boom, just a quick knee to the stomach. And you can see Silva double over there. It just really folds him, and he starts to reach for that leg and push for that takedown. It's a really sneaky, nasty strike. It can cause a lot of damage and really wilt a guy over time if you're landing these over and over, you know, over the course of a fight. It can pay dividends in wilting their cardio, draining their energy. Now, another knee he'll throw too at distance here to enter the clinch is he'll step in with a flying knee. So the way he throws it is he steps in, he goes to throw this right leg up as a feint so that you'll start to drop your defenses to block this, but the knee is actually going to come on the other side with the other leg that he means to hit you with. So you can see Bruno here drops his shoulder and his arm to defend this knee, but that's not actually the knee that he's trying to hurt him with. He's trying to hurt him with the opposite one. So this side is open, and bam, he lands that knee right there in the chest, right there in the upper sternum area, and that, you know, will knock the wind out of you too and start to drain your cardio as well, drain your energy, throw off your timing and your rhythm, make it hard to step in. Just another nasty body attack with those knees. And another funny detail here, he starts to push Silva away, and he could really follow up with a strike here if he wanted to. But Pereira actually pulls his hand back, and he's gonna backhand Silva, almost like a backhand slap. And you can see him winding it up right here, and he's gonna backhand him in the chin. So just kind of a funny detail there. Pereira will kind of trolls during his fights. He's a little bit cocky sometimes. He'll showboat a little bit. Silva hit him with a body shot at one point, and he looks down at his abs and kind of brushes them off like, you know, that was nothing. And later in the fight, Silva throws a strike that misses, and when it misses, Pereira kind of looks off to the side like, where'd that strike go, you know? So just some funny little tidbits here from Pereira too. But anyway, back to the clinch. You know, here on the fence too, we can see this same thing at play with these sneaky knees. So again, he's got this elbow control, you know, controlling any potential attacks from Silva, not allowing him to get under or overhooks, not allowing him to throw elbows, no uppercuts, nothing, just neutralizing the position. And he can kind of steer Silva around with that. And, you know, he lets go of it for a second, goes right back to it. Silva tries to pull his arm away. He's also opening space here, though, by doing this, which isn't good. So Pereira's looking to get an inside bicep tie here again to get control. He doesn't fully get it, but because the space is open, he sees an opportunity to throw a knee real quick. And again, just a nasty, quick body shot right to the liver, you know, and again, these can pay off big over time. And he uses that knee to get control again here. Now, once Pereira has control again here, Silva's going to respond by throwing his own knee, but watch what Pereira does here. As he goes to throw the knee, he's going to push this elbow to the inside to block the knee with his own arm. So this arm gets stuck, you know, and deflects this knee and gets in the way of it coming up from him pushing it inward. Just really slick here to block this. So both of their arms are blocking that knee coming up. Then from there, Pereira uses the opportunity to start to push Silva away, opening that space. And again, quick knee to the body. Just always putting that body in threat with those knees. Just in, you know, quick milliseconds, he can just drop a knee right to the liver. So another example of how he uses these sneaky knees to the body. They're going to get into a punching exchange here and start to close the distance. And as he closes the distance, he's going to cut an angle off to the side. So they get in this clinch range. He starts to grab it, and he's going to start to cut the corner this way. He's going to start to angle off. And as he does that, it's going to allow him to drive this knee right up the middle here into his body as he cuts the angle. So you can see here, drives it again right into his stomach as he cuts the angle. He's got that perpendicular angle, the dominant angle. Continues to cut off to get even more perpendicular to him off to the side here. And, you know, Bruno, again, is still folded over from this shot. Just brutal little shots that you don't expect. So, again, let's go back through it here so we can see it a little bit quicker. As he closes the distance, we'll go from here. They're throwing punches. He goes to step in with the clinch. Boom, just a quick knee as he cuts off to the angle. And, you know, now it's got Silva on the defensive after eating another body shot. And this one actually hurt him really bad. Silva is so tough. This guy, he's got a stoic poker face. He can hide the pain because this one hurt him really bad. You can see it's in the last 6 seconds of the third round. And the reason why I say it hurt him really bad is he continued to back up and Pereira was stalking him, and he throws a punch to try to get Pereira off of him, which again, Silva is just a beast for being able to even throw a punch and to hide the pain, because as soon as this round ends, watch what happens. The referee comes over to break up the fight and Silva just goes down right away holding his stomach. You just know that shot was just brutal. Respect to Silva for hiding that pain, but man, those knees from Pereira are really sneaky, and Adesanya is going to have to watch out for that. If they get in any clinch situations or if they even close the gap for a second, he could get hit by those, and that could really start to ruin his mobility by building up damage to the body, really start to drain his energy levels and his cardio levels, and again, pay dividends in a 5-round fight if it goes the distance. Another quick note here too is when we think of Alex Pereira's left hook, we typically think about it going up high, looking for that knockout, looking to land on the chin. And while it's mostly true, he also throws it to the body in devastating fashion too, where he can really dig in those body shots. And when you pair those with his devastating knees to the body, you have a really brutal combination. He can sneak those knees in when you're close, or he can even hit the body at distance. And I'm really interested to see if he looks to try to implement this against Israel, because it could really be a big difference maker in this fight if he's able to land these shots. So from there, I started thinking, how is Israel Adesanya going to approach this fight? What is his strategy going to be? And I started thinking about how he fought against Paulo Costa, and I was wondering if he might try to implement this type of strategy at range. Now, Costa is a very different fighter than Alex Pereira. He's much more aggressive, and I don't think he has as wide of a range of an arsenal as Pereira does to close the distance, to cut off the cage, and to land strikes from various angles, and his patience and things like that. So Costa was fairly limited here in this fight into what he could do to deal with this attack, but it may be a good blueprint for what Israel may do to try to chop down the tree, so to speak, and to try to chip away at Alex Pereira over time, rather than get into a crazy firefight with him and risk getting knocked out. In this fight, he attacked his lead leg a lot so that Paulo, couldn't put a lot of power into it, because Paulo loves to, press forward with a lot of pressure and throw bombs. So if you remove this leg, this pivot leg where he gets a lot of the power to throw his punches from, now you just eliminated a huge part of his game. And he also can't come forward without being afraid, being, kicked in this leg over and over again and taking damage. And you also slow down his mobility. It's like being stuck in quicksand. If you reduce his mobility over time, he's going to be vulnerable to punches up top. So when he would throw these, upper calf kicks, sometimes he would throw them to the lower calf, and sometimes he would teep to the knee. He had a wide variety of just staying at range. And when Paulo would come in, he would dart out laterally and just constantly reset the fight. And again, throwing this calf kick over and over again, and just always being at range to where, when Costa would attack, it was so far away that it was pretty easy to get ahead of the attack and to block it, and to see it coming from a long ways away. This whole fight was really a masterclass on how to handle an aggressive, hard-hitting, big striker, and he would mix up these leg kicks to the inside as well. So, no matter what angle Costa's coming in at, he has to risk getting hit from the outside or from the inside or directly on. It's just like this leg is getting surrounded with leg attacks, and it's always something to think about. And just look at the nasty bruising on that leg. Some of that is also, these bruises are from cupping, but these are not. And his leg just got brutalized really fast in this fight, again, just always hammering that leg. And in this particular combo, he teeped to the knee, and then he immediately came back with an outside leg kick to the calf, just hammering that leg over and over again, and you see him lift it up here. It's just, there's not a lot he can do here to start mounting momentum to come forward. He's always on the defensive, taking damage. Israel is also really good at using his feints, staying at range here, to where, again, when Costa would attack, he would bite on this feint. So let me go back here. It's a little bit tough to see here with screenshots, but what Israel is doing is he's feinting forward and then pulling back, and that makes Costa respond by throwing a kick. He thinks that Israel's pushing in, but he's not. Instead, he's going back out, and that puts him in a perfect position to catch this kick. It just goes right there, right under his arm. So, those feints can make his opponent bite on attacks and put them in a bad position. This is a really compromised position. He could fire a shot here like Anderson Silva did years ago against James Irvin and land a knockout. The wide variety of kicks at distance too allowed him to throw inside leg kicks like this and then double up by throwing a question mark kick because, Costa doesn't know if this kick is coming low or not. And he actually has a pretty good reaction here. He's starting to bring his hands up anyway, but it's a lot to deal with. He's always backing up from something. It's that leg kick is throwing him off. It's twisting his body up. You can see how he's all twisted here. And then Israel brings it back down and throws it up high. Now he's got to back up from that. And, things like this, he throws a left straight and pulls back again. Huge gap here. There's just always something sending Costa backwards. That's the point with this strategy, is keeping distance and always sending the aggressive opponent back, breaking up their rhythm, their momentum, their timing. They can just never mount enough momentum to land the big shot. And again, this leg that's damaged, they can't put enough weight on it to pivot and throw a hard shot either. It's taking power out of their punches. Again, Israel here would, gauge the distance with that lead hand and throw high kicks. It's just, he threw like every kick variation there is in this fight practically. He just threw tons of weapons at him. And you can see Costa here just with his tongue out, just getting frustrated here eventually. Just like, what do I even do? He can't close the gap at all, and here again, he goes to step in. Israel parries it, responds with a body kick, and this can also be a great kick to throw against an orthodox fighter because he has to chamber this hand. So, you can't throw power shots with this hand if you got to use it here to block body kicks. So just a great usage overall of a wide variety of kicks to keep the aggressive fighter away. And I wonder if Israel is going to use something like this against Pereira, or try to chip away at distance and to put Pereira in bad positions where he gets frustrated. Now, Pereira's not an aggressive guy like Costa is, where he's going to look to push in all the time. Pereira likes to counter-strike as well, as we saw with Strickland. He'll steer his opponent into shots. To say that the strategy would work exactly the same wouldn't be accurate, but still working at distance is going to keep him out of range of that huge left hook landing, or putting him in firefights with a guy, who's so strong and so powerful. It doesn't make sense to sit there and be in firefights with him. It makes a lot more sense to be at distance and to be the technician and the matador. One more sequence here I wanted to show is when Costa started to push in and start to get some pressure here. Israel responded by throwing this left hand up high, kind of as a fake, not fully committing to it, but mainly to disguise this high kick that's coming in. And as it comes up, it hits Costa in the head, and that's going to cause him to rethink this decision to push in and start to back up. And Israel again goes to feint, whether it's an inside leg kick, whether it's a question mark kick up high, you don't know what he's going to do, but that feint again backs Costa off. And now that, that pressure attempt has got Costa on the back foot halfway across the cage again because of that kick diversity at range. Now I want to take a second to kind of touch on some of the intangibles in this fight. And Israel recently did an interview on his channel, which I recommend checking out, where he expressed some of his thoughts on this fight. One of the things he said was that he typically fights better when there's some animosity involved. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. But in the Paulo Costa fight, where I know he had some animosity against Costa, you could really tell that he was super locked in. That was Israel operating at his highest level. He was laser focused, he was sharp, and he just looked really, really good in that fight. And you could tell there was animosity by what he did to Costa on the ground after the knockout. We all saw it, mocking him, to put it lightly. But I do think that animosity maybe does add some edge to his game in some way. It's just an interesting thing when you look at the fights where he did have a chip on his shoulder. There seems to be a little extra oomph in there. I can't quantify it. I can't put data into that. It's just something that, I noted. It's an intangible. Israel also said that, he expects this to be a grueling fight, and that the difference with this fight versus his last three is that he knew he could beat the last three guys, but with Alex Peirera, he knows that he can lose to him because he has lost to him. The proof is there. He's been knocked out, and he admits that, and that was interesting to hear. He also said he expects to get hit hard in this fight and for it to be a firefight. Now, I don't know if that's some fight speak in there. I don't know if he's really expecting to be in a firefight per se, but I think he does know that he's going to have to deal with Alex's power at some point, and that, a flawless victory in this probably isn't super likely with how close they are in skill, both being elite kickboxers. So again, that was interesting to hear him acknowledge that. And Israel also said that he hopes that Alex Peirera banks on that left hook because he's got something for it. Now, I don't know what that means. Again, that could be some fight speak. That could be some, posturing and kind of a tough guy thing before the fight to try to get in the head of the opponents. He may have something for the left hook. hook, he may not. I don't know. You know, that's a really elite weapon to deal with, and there's many ways that Pereira can land that. But it's interesting to hear Israel acknowledge it directly, because, you know, everybody online talking about this fight is talking about that left hook. The left hook, it's just a dangerous weapon. And, you know, Israel's pointing out that, you know, hey, I know about that left hook too, and they must be game planning something around it. So it'll be interesting to see. Now, in conclusion, like I was saying before, Pereira is hittable. He is this big, intimidating, hard-hitting figure, but at the same time, he is hittable. And a guy like Israel can capitalize on that and land shots himself. I think that action from Pereira is going to come in bursts and come in pockets. It's not going to be a big swarm. There's going to be periods of Israel landing shots on him, probably landing leg kicks, punches, but then sudden big bursts from Pereira, just like their kickboxing fight. I think that's the one thing that's going to mirror their kickboxing fight, is the similar pacing. Even though they're very different fighters now, I think there's going to be that general rhythm where Izzy is the one kind of pushing the action, throwing more volume overall, and Pereira is kind of the one that's a little bit more patient, looking to land bigger shots with more power and lower volume overall. Lastly, everybody wants to know, is Israel going to wrestle against Pereira? And I think it's a good question. I think it would be a really good opportunity in this fight for Israel to show his well-rounded MMA skill set and to, you know, throw some takedowns in the mix, drain some of that gas tank of Pereira, you know, get some of that fatigue in his arms so he can't throw as hard and as fast. It would be a really smart move, I think, to mix in some of that wrestling and to give Alex something else to think about, rather than, you know, having a kickboxing match with 4-ounce gloves, which is super dangerous for both guys. You know, either guy can hurt the other, but, you know, obviously I think Pereira has the power advantage here, and definitely the concussive power advantage, to where he can end the fight with one single shot. Israel's typically the guy that'll sting you, stun you, and then follow it up with a flurry to finish the fight, whereas Alex just needs that one opening and it's over. If I was going to lean one way in this fight, it's very, very difficult to pick one. It's such a close fight for a variety of reasons, you know. But as they say in the strength and conditioning world in sports, usually when you have two athletes of similar skill level, the stronger one will usually win more often than not. And because of that, I don't like these types of fights where the technician has to be perfect for 25 minutes and the powerful striker only needs to be perfect for a split second in time. It's tough to matador a guy who's similar in skill to you for 25 minutes and never get caught in a bad spot. I think at some point in this fight, Israel's chin's going to get tested by some of Pereira's best power shots. And the question will be, can he take the shots and will he see them coming? Like in their second fight, Pereira threw a shot that Israel just simply didn't see coming. He reacted, you know, when Pereira threw that right hook and it was deflected in the exchange, Israel responded by, you know, throwing up this defense for the incoming left hook coming around. But the problem is that it went in front of his hand and connected with his chin and knocked him out. So his body was responding, you know, the reflexes that he's built in training. He responded correctly with the defense, but he still got caught. And that can happen because, again, this is happening in milliseconds. So even if Israel technically has the right response, he still could get caught and knocked out. Now, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion or anything that Alex Pereira is just going to go out there and knock him out and Israel has no chance. He could absolutely matador him in the way that he did with Costa and frustrate him and really show off the skills that he has, and maybe even mix up his game with some takedowns and some unexpected things that we don't usually see from Israel, and show a true well-rounded MMA skill set. You know, Israel in his interview said he's been hanging out a lot with GSP, and GSP was the master of mixing things up and throwing a whole lot of weapons at you. So, you know, maybe Israel will take a page out of his book and mix in some of the takedowns with his game and just give Alex Pereira a million things to think about. I think it'd be the really smart approach here. You know, it's not often that we get two elite kickboxers that can play the same roles at the same level. You know, both guys can be the aggressive, high-pressure striker, and both guys can be the counter striker who lands laser-accurate shots that puts you out, you know, and steers you into shots that can end the fight at any second. And that's what makes this matchup so fascinating, and I just can't wait to see how this one plays out.